Hi, and you're most welcome to the Leadership Roots podcast with me, Mark Redmond. And in this podcast, I get to speak with a diverse range of leaders about what they think lies at the roots of great leadership. And my guest today has played leadership roles in so many different sectors, from technology, the multinational sector, education sector, semi-state, advocacy, not-for-profit and strategic advisory. And over his career to date, the roles he has held include Site Leader, Vice President EMC Cork, Site Leader Cork, Vice President and Chief Information Officer for Europe, the Middle East and Africa with Dell Technologies, Chair of the governing bodies of both the Cork Institute of Technology and the Munster Technological University, or MTU, Chair of the National Skills Council, President of the American Chamber of Commerce Ireland, and Board Member of Enterprise Ireland. He currently serves as Chair of the Southwest Regional Offshore Wind Working Group, Board Member at the Tyndall National Institute, and Strategic Advisor at 360. And MTU honoured him with an honorary doctorate in engineering. Bob Savage, you are most welcome to the Leadership Roots podcast.
Mark, thank you for having me.
Bob, as I was reading that introduction, I had to stop and remind myself, this is one person we're talking about, not many people. So your journey has been incredible. And one of the themes I would pick up, common themes between the various leadership roles you've had and have, is leading people through transformative change, either because we're seizing ambition or because we're facing an existential threat. So I'm thinking about leading your team through COVID. I'm thinking about leading your teams through Dell's acquisition of EMC. I'm thinking of the opportunities of cloud and AI. I'm thinking of the formulation of the Munster Technological University. What, as a leader, did you lean in on, and what did you demonstrate when you were leading your people through those existential changes?
Authenticity, so important. Earn respect of the team, the broader team, the leadership team, so that people trust you. People trust you in what you say. People trust you in what you do. And being accessible, Mark, is so important. I found that during COVID in particular, because we had no blueprint for any of this. And we had a manufacturing site. We had to come in and do our work. And, you know, I'm a strong proponent of emotional intelligence. And an element of that is empathy. And through my mentors, and we'll get into it maybe a bit later, I understood empathy with my boss. But really, during that COVID period, I appreciated empathy with team members from all over the place. And that happens as well during a business transition. You know, you get a coalition of the willing to come with you. You get a win or two that people can see. They can follow you. They trust what you're doing. And you won't get everybody, but you'll get enough to get the momentum, be it a strategic change at corporate or whatever. And authenticity is what I started with. Authenticity and earning respect is key.
You know, building on that, a leader, it's a lonely place to be at times. It can be a particularly lonely place to be at times of existential opportunity or crisis. And I'm a firm believer that a leader always should ask for what they need. What did you need in those moments of existential change or crisis? What supported you? What sustained you as a leader?
Well, I've been very fortunate through my leadership, particularly the US multinational side, that I've always had one or two people who are champions or sponsors and I always say, open a door that is a bit too heavy for me to open. And during that type of change, you feel they'll speak for you when you're not there, and you can go to them for counsel and advice. The other thing I would say is watch and observe the great leaders around you in previous transitions and learn from them and seek a bit of their time so that you can get from them. For instance, one of the senior leaders advised me when I was with EMC is do some work for not-for-profit. Go out there in some of those areas that you mentioned, and you'll be surprised when you come back what you've learned and apply in your day job or in your strategic job.
I want to bring you back now, Bob, because you already mentioned the importance of mentors and sponsors, and they play different roles, and you might speak to that, right? But when you look back over your journey, who would you look to as saying that was a really valuable mentor? This is what I learned from them.
Well, I've taken mentor to a slightly different level. I have two trusted advisors in my life. My wife of 36 years and Martin Brennan, who started as my coach and is now my trusted advisor and friend. A trusted advisor is someone who'll tell you what you need to hear as opposed to what you want to hear, and you'll take that on board. That's very important when you're making a strategic career decision or a work decision. So the trusted advisor is key. But as I said earlier, leaders and champions that take you under their wing and mind you through a scenario where you're finding it a bit difficult, and you know you can go to them when, because the leader doesn't know everything. The leader of today has development needs and self-awareness, the other emotion. You have to be aware of what they are. And therefore, you then go to these trusted advisors, these champions and sponsors, and invariably, if you ask the right question, they'll help you.
So it's fascinating for me that Martin Brennan transitioned from being coach to trusted advisor. So that's a very deep interaction the two of you have. When you reflect back on it, or maybe let me say, if you're advising somebody else in choosing a coach or a trusted advisor, what criteria should they be keeping in mind?
Well, you know, I've gone with several coaches, great people, but we don't have chemistry. So you've got to, on both sides, call it a day. With Martin, we started in coaching, team leader essentials, that kind of thing. And we knew there was an empathy building up and there was a trust building up. And he was comfortable enough challenging me about myself and my shortcomings. And I was able to take those. And over years, it took probably 5 years to get to the stage, yeah, he's a trusted advisor now. He's not afraid to tell me what I need to hear. And I hopefully will take that on board.
And I want to focus on the word hopefully, because it means you are able to listen and absorb and understand feedback or coaching that actually mightn't align with what you thought before you heard it. Did that come easy to you, Bob, or was that a journey for you?
Didn't come easy. It doesn't come easy for anybody. And the body language would explain it to anyone who sees you. But you have to practice it. Someone asked me as I was leaving Dell last summer, and they said, what are the things you're still working on as a leader? And listen carefully and be patient. And listening, because there are people coming around the place saying things to you that if you're in listening mode, they'll be hugely valuable. And don't dismiss them because of your bias.
I personally believe listening is the most important communication skill, but it's easy to say that, it's harder to practice it. So I'm going to get very practical with you now, right? And a lot of people I work with struggle with being able to actively listen. How do you actively listen?
Well, it's developed over time. A mistake or two that you made because you weren't listening is a great way of reinforcing the listening. I'm going to mention this later, but I look at futurists quite a bit, because if you're trying to develop that strategic mindset, they take you away from the day-to-day and get you thinking broader. And Martin Brennan introduced me to the futurist Joel Barker and the business of paradigms. And it's a workshop and it's a video, but it's, you know, we run our life in paradigms, the rules that get us to do things every day. But when a paradigm shifts, there's a lot of disruption. And that shift comes from the edge. And I learned from a lot of his workshop was there are people coming around here saying things that are helpful to you. And if you're not in listening mode, you'll miss it. That's probably the start of me learning to listen better. The other thing I tried to do a bit of as well post-COVID was a bit of reverse mentoring. So a lot of the graduates who joined us, I spent a lot of time with them to see were they okay with COVID. And we formalised a reverse mentoring thing. Say, guys, sit with me and be comfortable telling me where I need to change. And I found that very, very good, reinforcing again how powerful listening can be.
And that must have been powerful for them to have time with you.
We actually set up a group in the end. They were in Block H, and it was called the H Block Regulars. So we had a bit of momentum there. And they gave me a gift with H Block Regulars on the crystal glass at the end. So we formed a grouping, and they helped me tremendously.
How,
But
Bob? What was the biggest learning from them now for you?
because they were telling me how that age group think in a post-COVID world and what we need to do to structure our values and our systems to make Dell a great place for them to work.
And if you would share with us, one piece of a nugget that they shared with you that informed your thinking, how you reformed your thinking, your behaviour, what might it be?
It was really about creating open spaces, not just the traditional desks where people can get together in groups of one or two from different business units, chat, and, it's that conversation that can spark some innovation, but also it makes people feel they belong and they have someone they can talk to. So the physical space where people, and I pass it every so often and I'd see them in there talking, that's one of many, but that's one that sticks with me.
To like work is a collective effort,
Absolutely.
not a lonely pursuit.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that. Another area, Bob, that I work with a lot with clients is, I'm just going to describe it as managing the boss, right? And just making sure that in terms of, quite frankly, your own career prospects and being seen to have potential, there is a skill set required to manage the boss. Would you mind talking about that from your perspective and what you've learned on your journey?
If I had to select the one piece of coaching with my trusted advisor, Matt and Brendan, we spend more time on than anything else is on managing your boss. Because most people, the cliche at this stage, they don't need their companies, they need their boss. And if I had to say, and I'm a pretty modest person, what I am good at is managing boss because I worked extraordinarily hard at it. And of course, the empathy factor comes in there very clearly. You've got to put yourself in the shoes of your boss. What's going on in their working life right now? Are they in the middle of some challenges that they have to deal with? And the best example I can give you with my boss when I first became a vice president was we had our regular one-on-one on a Tuesday at 1 o'clock. And I learned to study where he was, the pressure he was under, and I create each week a long list and a short list of things we needed to discuss. The short list is what I needed to get the week done and do my job. The long list was more developmental and futuristic. I learned to pick up after 10 seconds, time to put the long list away this week and stick to the short list. In doing so, you earn a great deal of respect from your boss, who respects you giving him or her back that time, and you'll have one of your sessions that will last an hour and a half. And that was really a great proof point.
You see, I think it's brilliant because it also, and I want to come back to empathy in a minute, but it also goes back to what you're speaking about in terms of listening, active listening and observing. And some people would say, I need to be true to who I am and true to my values. I'm not going to let this person walk all over me. So if I want to go through my long list, they're going to sit there and listen. What would you say back to such a position?
I'd be careful because, if you really understand empathy, you put yourself in that person's position. It also allows you to understand them better and befriend them better. But if they're under an incredible amount of pressure with some issue or a customer or whatever, the last thing they want from one of their 8 reports is taking up 40 minutes of their time when it could well be served to do it later. So yeah, you stick to your value system, but your value system has to include managing the relationship with your boss.
Yes. Now, I want your thoughts on this in the abstract, right? That's okay. Because you may be in a scenario, or people may be in a scenario, where they're trying the empathy thing with their boss and so on, but they've come to the view their boss actually really isn't interested in their career, the individual's career, their development, their advancement. How would you advise somebody in that situation?
Well, the first bit of advice I would say, don't give up the ghost immediately. Work with your coach. Try as much as you can in terms of starting with the empathy thing, but work as much as you can. Talk to peers about, is there something in my style, etc., while being politically aware that you have to say the right thing. Work it iteratively, but it may come, Mark. It may come to the situation where, this isn't going to work. But I plead with anybody in leadership, give it your best shot. Try as much as you can to build and work that relationship. And particularly in multinational land, get over to corporate and spend time, not just with your boss in his or her office, but go for a beer, etc., and build rapport maybe outside of the work.
Yeah. I love that. And it also speaks to what you said earlier about being patient, but also stepping outside the outside perspective you spoke about before in the context of observing not-for-profit, but even having the coffee with the boss in a different scenario, a different environment, who knows what that might bring. Bob, I do want to talk about empathy because it's something I personally hugely value and hugely come across in my coaching work. But in some quarters now, unfortunately, it's become almost a dirty word. And without being specific, there are global leaders who are describing empathy as like the Achilles heel of Western civilization. But as you describe empathy, which is my understanding of it, it's taking the time to fully understand the other person, understand what motivates them, understand what their life or lived existence is like. Like, why wouldn't every leader want to demonstrate that?
If I step back, because I'm an engineer, to my leadership formula, which is leadership is about your intelligence quotient, your IQ, your emotional intelligence quotient, which is a differentiator, and then I would say curiosity. They're multipliers. Curiosity for me is you're so passionate about something you're doing that you're not afraid to ask a stupid question. Now, for me, there are 4 elements to emotional intelligence. Self-awareness, which we'll cover. Motivation. A boss of mine said one time, motivation can be defined as you're so passionate about what you do, you'll nearly come to work for free. Political awareness, not being political, knowing when to talk and knowing when to shut up. I've seen very bright people say the wrong thing at the wrong time. But the one that stands out is empathy. And it is, as I said, it's where I got most coaching, is understand it's a human being. Your boss is there as a human being. This person here who's struggling in a flat because of COVID is a human being. So understand, it's not rocket science, but take the time to understand the whole person. And in doing so, it's strong leadership. It's leader, the leader acting as a coach and friend, understand where they are and seeking your help out. During COVID, we opened one of our buildings about 6 months in. And 35, we couldn't bring them to the manufacturing building because we had to keep that separate. But each day there were 35 to 40 people coming in there that really needed to come in there for their own sanity. And we understood, leadership, chief of staff, myself, we were doing something great beyond the job for these great people for that 6 or 8 month period.
You see, I don't think you can show empathy if you don't have self-awareness.
No.
Right?
Absolutely.
So that was one of your 4 pillars, right? So the empathy thing, Bob, I think we're in total agreement. But I just want to say again, I think for any leader, empathy has to be in your toolbox, but has to be real. You cannot fake empathy. It's so obvious if you are. But let's take a step back and let's talk about self-awareness. How did you develop self-awareness?
Well, again, it's through my coaching, and I give credit to Martin Brennan, but here you are as a human being, as a leader. So you have your strengths and you have your development areas. You can call them weaknesses, but they're your development areas. You need to identify them. Now, as a leader, how do you address those? Well, you can develop yourself in those areas or bring people into the team that have those skills that you don't have. I can generally operate broadly enough, but I can't operate without a finance person or without a legal person. And knowing that is half the battle, but knowing where your development areas are, and I suppose continually learning and discussing what you don't know.
Yeah.
And that brings a small bit of appropriate humility as well. You know, there's a phrase from a person by the name of King Whitney Jr. about change, and it goes, change has a considerable impact on the human mind. To the fearful, it's worrying because things may get worse. To the hopeful, it's encouraging because things may get better. But to the confident, and I write for myself in that when I write it down, not arrogant, not complacent, it can be inspiring because conditions exist to make things better. And that around change and around self-awareness, I recite that as I walk around to remind me, be humble, but be open to developing in areas that you have shortcomings.
And that humility piece as leader, right? Which again I think should be in the toolkit and needs to be authentic, right? which isn't arrogance. We're saying when we talk about confidence, confidence isn't arrogance, right? But we also, as leaders, need to be salespeople, if you know what I'm trying to say here, and communicators and storytellers. How do we balance that, Bob? How do we remain humble, not losing the run of ourselves, but yet do our best by our team, our organisation, our university, whatever it might be, in actually saying, we're pretty good at this now. In fact, we're probably amongst the best.
It's a bit like before on my operational excellence. You can't forget your numbers and your KPIs, but you're not going to tell the story of where we're going through KPIs. You have to watch them. So storytelling is very important. And you can be coached on that. And I got coached on that through various areas. Some of it might be natural inside, but you develop it. But bring in perhaps a little bit of humour, but self-deprecating as you go along. Because you have to deliver the message. People have to understand where we're going. But put yourself down a little bit here and there. It does no harm, and it shows, it gets people much more comfortable with you.
I love that. I'm going to come back to storytelling if you don't mind, but I now want to go to another one of your 4 pillars when we're talking about self-awareness, we're talking about empathy, but you talked about political know-how.
Political awareness.
Political awareness, and you said it's not politics as in...
No, politics can be cynical. Political awareness is basically knowing when to talk and knowing when to shut up.
Right. Again, can you give us examples, and you don't necessarily have to give names here, but examples of where you've seen that work for people and demonstrating political awareness, and where it didn't happen and the consequences were unfortunate?
This kind of ties in the boss a bit as well. Very talented, on the career ladder, really making headway, but decides at a meeting to tackle his or her boss over a set of numbers in front of people that wasn't appropriate. And Christina, it is career limiting. And I've seen so many great people set their career back by 5 years by just take that pause and say, hold on, that's a conversation for down in the coffee dock later on, type of thing. That's the biggest one I would see. And I've seen too much of it, to be honest.
And like Bob, is not coming from a good place of enthusiasm generally. It's somebody who's just so, fixated on getting the right answer. They've almost started talking before they've even thought about what they're going to say, right?
Most of the good people that fall into that trap are genuine people and but haven't made themselves suitably aware that this environment is not the place to bring that up.
And so this brings us back to your earlier comment about pausing, reflecting, just taking that moment, taking that beat to read the room. And again, I think it's important to say this. You're not surrendering your values.
No, absolutely not.
You're not a person of less integrity.
No.
But you're actually recognizing what success will look like, playing the long game and getting the right answer for everybody concerned, right? Fair?
Patient factor that I talk about. Sometimes immediate action has consequences above and beyond where you might think. Therefore, playing that long game, taking a bit more time, let things take their course a little bit, can be much more productive.
And you see, this goes back to something else that you were touching on. Like, just say for argument's sake, in that hypothetical room you were describing, there were 5 people. To the best of your ability, you should have had the cup of coffee or the chat with each of those 5 people before the meeting started. In other words, you have an idea, who are these people? Where are they coming from? Don't go to an important meeting not knowing who you're talking to and not knowing who's looking at you. Is that okay?
Absolutely. I'll add one more thing to that.
Please.
Keeping your boss informed. No surprises. I had lots of great bosses, and they'll all tell you that. They do not want to hear critical information that should be coming from you from somewhere else. And that increases your awareness and your listening power, I can tell you, when you make that mistake, because you won't make it a second time.
Come here, that's hugely important, actually, and I come across this a lot. So I want your advice on this one, right? Because this requires judgment.
Yeah.
This requires telling the boss what they need to know, but not overwhelming them with stuff that you're almost covering your you-know-what by saying, but I told you that 2 weeks ago. So this takes practice, and this isn't an overnight thing, but how do we develop that judgment, Bob, to know what the boss needs to hear and what I can actually manage myself and don't need to bother them with?
Well, again, it should be a thematic coaching type of thing. But let me give you, again, I wasn't VP for long, and my boss assigned me to look after a major order for a major customer in Asia. And I devoted myself and my time totally to it. It took 3 days to process. We finished it and we shipped it. But I never kept him informed all the way along the line. And as he said to me, my boss's boss, the CEO, is asking me about this. And I was lucky that was a mistake I made. My boss took it as a coaching moment for me, and I developed accordingly.
And you see, the problem is we hate a vacuum. If there's silence, we assume the worst.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yep.
We assume the worst. So, and I think, again, Bob, it probably goes back to your empathy point. Put yourself in the boss's shoes. If you were the boss, what would you like to be told? What would you like to hear?
Empathy kicked in when I sat back from the bit of coach and said, my God.
Yeah. I want to reverse it now, this scenario, to just get your thoughts, because I've seen this happen, where somebody is on the fast track, let's call it. Somebody is really, they're on the fast track to get to the top table, but they're being put through their paces. And they're at that table of pressure, where it's very intense. And a very senior person takes them out, balls them out of it, literally cuts the legs from under them, right? Very hard not to take that personally. Very hard not to take that personally and then get defensive. But I would see that as both a learning opportunity, God help us, but also it's a test to see how do you react in a pressurized situation. Do you have that judgment and that reserve not to respond? Now, easier for me to say that, but is that a fair comment?
And it's easy for me to say it now at 63 years of age and been through 15 years of leadership. But my advice to someone, if you're not long in leadership, is do not react at that point in time, because that's the other person's problem. Don't make it your problem. Get back out of there, get a friend or a coach and discuss it with you, because I've seen that happen, and I've seen that happen where you'll recover from that with surrounding yourself with the right people and the right advice, and the onus really goes back to the person that did what they did. And that will always happen. But don't react there and then, because you're giving license. There's a little bit of, it's not disrupting your values, it's just a little bit, be patient with it and move to another agenda.
That's a great insight. And that phrase you used there, it's the other person's problem.
Yeah.
It's not my problem.
That's the real empathy. That's empathy reversed. And you don't respond to that instantaneously.
Right. And as you said, in not responding, it's not like you have to climb up every barricade waving a flag.
Absolutely.
You're not surrendering your values. You're holding your fire. You're pausing and giving yourself a chance not to jump in. That will be counterproductive. But also, you're putting it into perspective. This is not about me, and therefore don't take it personally. It's not personal. Don't take it personally.
Absolutely right.
Lovely. Love it. Bob, I want to move on, if I may, to another kind of defining moment in someone's leadership journey. And it's often described as the tap on the shoulder or the presentation of an opportunity to step up to a new exciting role or a new territory or a new opportunity. And it comes across in any organisation. And another guest I had on this series described that the important thing is you won't be perfect, but be ready enough. Be ready enough. So this is self-awareness now. This is being self-aware. How, Bob, when you got those amazing various taps on the shoulder, could you say to yourself, I'm ready enough? Or could you?
As I got older, I was ready enough. And sometimes when I got tapped on the shoulder, how do I say I don't want to do this, even though I'm capable of doing it? And there's been a few of those assignments in the last 5 or 6 years. But if your boss's boss, for instance, asks you to do something, and it's kind of out of your bailiwick, but that happened to me in a scenario about doing a project in India, and I went to my coach, Martin Brennan, and I laid it out, and I laid out the lovely, eloquent note I'd written as to why I won't take this on. And Martin said, are you planning to stay with the company for any time longer? And it went from there. And when I did take it on, I was reassured that it was the experience that my boss's boss saw that I was doing here and just apply it in India. So, it's be careful about refusing an assignment. And the other thing, by the way, these assignments can get you to the next level, which then ties you back, very importantly, to succession planning. as soon as you get your feet comfortably into your leadership role, start looking, be the leader as coach, and start looking at a successor. Because there may be an opportunity come up that you want to go for, but if you don't have a ready-made successor, you may not get the opportunity to go for it. So succession planning, tap on the shoulder and saying yes, very important, especially in a multinational environment.
And succession planning also requires you to be the leader as coach and mentor, to bring on and show the empathy to bring on that person and bring on their talent.
In fact, it is essential. You talked before about developing a strategic mindset. Well, in doing that, the leader invariably isn't there quite a bit. But if you've done the right thing in terms of leader as coach and developing the team, they'll work away very well without you. And I am so delighted with some of my successors in roles that I left to have done better than me. Yeah. And I never thought I could feel like that, but they've done better than me, and I'm proud of that because I felt I had a little hand in some of their development.
Bob, it's been a great conversation. I'm about to ask you for a book or a reading recommendation, but before I do, right, is there anything else now that just has come up in your mind as we've been chatting here in terms of advice for future leaders who might be listening to us that you'd want to say?
The day I went for this vice president job a number of times, by the way, and it was on the third time I got it. So that's an important, learned a lot from the second occasion. But my boss's boss, who I knew pretty well in EMC, called me into his office and he said, I'm going to say 3 things to you, Bob. First of all, you are now a leader and a leader of leaders. I need you to empower them and allow them make decisions. Otherwise, we're not going to work well. And he said, I don't want you doing Gantt charts or spreadsheets, the detail that you used to do before. It's a different thing. Second of all, he said, when you get up in the morning, put a clean sheet of paper in front of you, draw a line down the middle. One side, you write down the things you can control and forget about them, and you focus on the other side. And then the personal piece of advice, which is important for every leader, only you can plan and manage your career. You can blame bosses or blame a friend for not giving you the right information, but you own your career and your career plan. And I've kept them with me since 2008.
They are fantastic. Now, if we could all follow those 3, pieces of advice, Bob, they're absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And just that piece about only you can control your career.
You can plan and manage your career.
You know, like I use a phrase, you know, are you shaping your career or are other people shaping it for you, you know? But I love that. But also that physical activity of writing something down, what's in my control, what is not in my control, very powerful psychologically, to the physical act of writing it down, no more so than we were chatting earlier, but saying something out loud, very powerful just to hear yourself say that.
I write everything down.
Brilliant.
I did head of sales for EMEA for the company we were in. We were going to Morocco one time, and for the whole flight I was writing. And he was saying, are you writing a book? But writing stuff down makes it concrete, for me anyway. And I do that exercise quite a bit of that side of the A4 page.
Yeah, no, it is. It is very, very powerful for us, right? Bob, have you a reading recommendation for us or something you'd suggest we might have a look at to further our thoughts?
When someone asks me that, I'd always think, because I met the man, Clayton Christensen. He's no longer with us, but he wrote The Innovator's Dilemma. If there's 2 things that I maniacally focus on is education and innovation. Innovation is not just about invention. Innovation is about doing things differently, doing things that others aren't doing, adding new value. And you're in a great company and you're serving your customers very well, but a technology shift comes that can completely disrupt you. And therefore, you've got to have ways of managing that and keeping that eye out, that strategic mindset. And there's a lot in The Innovator's Dilemma that can help you there. I tie to that then, I mentioned him earlier, Joel Barker on The Business of Paradigms, his workshop. Because again, he talks about that disruptive change and how it comes from the edge. And how you prepare yourself, that strategic mindset thing, that you can maybe see that a little bit better. And I refer to the workshop and the book many times during the year and still do now that I've left the multinational.
Brilliant recommendations, Bob. I am going to try to summarise my key takeaways from this amazing conversation, Bob, and I won't get it all in, but your final three pieces are still going around in my mind. So for me, it's recognizing that moment where you're moving from manager to leader and how you change your behaviors and approach. Secondly, just taking that moment every day to document, write down what's in my control, what isn't in my control. And thirdly, remember, you own your career journey. You're responsible for it. Don't leave it in somebody else's hands.
That's it.
Right? Empathy is so important for all of us. Reverse mentoring, active listening. Take every interaction as a learning opportunity that will help you do your job better. And then that judgment piece, whether it's not taking stuff personally, it's being empathetic about where your boss is coming from, being patient, taking that pause, taking that breath.
Very well said.
Bob Savage, thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed this remarkable conversation with Bob. If you have, I would be most grateful if you could rate it, review it, repost it, or like it wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to reach me, I'm at mark@redmondcoaching.ie. I want to thank our great production team on sound, Blessing Kure, and of course the great series producer, Jonathan DeBurka Butler. Look forward to welcoming you to the next episode of Leadership Roots. Until then, stay safe and well. Bye.